Okay, folks, here we are in Reston, Virginia at the annual meeting of the Company of Military Historians, and we have the pleasure of being able to interview Clive Law, who's a Canadian member of the company, about his fantastic collection of cavalry helmets of the Canadian Militia. And with that, I'll just turn it over to Clive. Could you tell us a little bit about your collection, Clive?
Glad to. Cavalry helmets are not a common item in the Canadian military, but they are a traditional item going back to our British heritage. Typically they're worn by dragoon regiments as well as by yeomanry regiments, which were their territorial army in the old days. Today in Canada they're worn by two regular force regiments, the Lord Strathcona Horse and the Royal Canadian Dragoons, but only by a very limited number, about 50 people who form a mounted troop. And this is additional to their real army duties of driving tanks. There's also a reserve army regiment called the Governor General's Horse Guards, based in Toronto, who also wear it. I'll just give you an example of some of the helmets I have here. The oldest one is tucked away in the back. It's an Albert pattern, which predates it to 1850. This one is about 1870. You can see it's very ornate, Queen Victorian crown. It's the 3rd Princess Louise Canadian Dragoon Guards. The regiment was disbanded in 1880, so we were pretty positive of the dating of this one. It's an incredible shape considering the age, and the plume is still there, and the plume is original. It has, however, lost its liner, as well as the leather backing to the chin strap. It's a brass helmet, as most of them were, with the exception of the Governor General's Horse Guards later on, or earlier on, the Governor General's bodyguards, who always wore a steel helmet, and that example is here, right next to it. This specific example dates post-1903, which you can tell by the King's crown on top of the helmet plate. It displays a rather distressed white plume, which is missing the rosette at the top, and it's missing its chin strap. But I'm not a big believer in trying to restore or replace items. I tend to keep them very much as I have found them. Probably one of the more interesting helmets here is the one that is only 2 years old. This one here was one of 50 that was made for the Royal Canadian Dragoons 125th anniversary 2 years ago in 2008. I assisted the company who got the contract to have them made, which was actually subcontracted out to India. And as a thank you, they provided me with a helmet. It's very similar to the traditional helmet. The shell is larger, which takes into account the larger size of soldiers these days. It displays the gilt laurel wreath, the new pattern of star. The error made, of course, was in the plume. You'll see that the plume is just draped down and is nothing at all like the other plumes, which build up and flare out. And this is a flaw that unfortunately they couldn't rectify in time for the parade, as they'd only received the helmets 3 days beforehand, but they have since fixed that.
That's pretty interesting, Clive.
There's another helmet here with a really interesting history. This helmet here to the 19th Alberta Dragoons. The Alberta Dragoons was a regiment based in Edmonton, which really, typical of most Western cavalry regiments, wore Stetsons as their full dress headdress. However, in 1939, King George V and then Queen Elizabeth came to visit Canada on the royal tour, and the regiment decided that they really should go out and get a British-style cavalry helmet, to which they were entitled. They contacted the Royal Inniskilling Dragoon Guards, which was their allied regiment, and arranged for the purchase of a number of these helmets in time for the royal tour. However, communication obviously broke down. They received the helmet only, which meant the shell and the chin strap. Of course, the helmet plate was missing because they wouldn't wear another regiment's helmet plate, but the stem was missing, as was the plume. Well, they managed to borrow plumes from the Royal Canadian Dragoons, from the Lord Strathcona Horse, who wear the same white over red horsehair plume, but they couldn't find the stems. And you'll see the other helmets all have a quatrefoil style of stem. So they jury-rigged a piece of brass tubing and wore that for the parade. war broke out within 3 months, so they never had need to wear the badge again or to wear the helmet again. And by 1946, when they came back from Europe, the Army had changed and full dress had gone out of style, so they never did correct the error. The helmet plate is rather interesting because they took a generic star, their current cap badge of the 19th Canadian Dragoons, but they superimposed it on the gold or gilt wreath of their predecessor unit, which is the 19th Alberta Mounted Rifles. So a close look will show that the scroll of the silver badge doesn't fit or overlay the scroll of the gilt badge at all.
Well, Clive, that was fascinating. I'm going to go ahead and just take a little bit of footage of the rest of them, but I really appreciate your giving us an interpretation of your amazing collection here, and I hope you win an award with this.
Well, it's my pleasure. Thank you very much.
Sure. Here's one, I'll just read the tags. That says Manitoba Dragoons, circa 1910. And the one we just saw, Alberta Dragoons. Here's the Princess Louise Dragoon Guard, circa 1935. Governor General's Bodyguard, circa 1903. That looks like a nickel. Is that nickel on there?
That
nickel
is.
on steel? Okay.
Yes.
Nickel on steel helmet, kind of a neat looking thing. Interesting color combination. Here's one he talked about, the Royal Canadian Dragoons, circa 2008. How do you say this, Lord
Strathcona's horse.
Lord Strathcona's horse? Okay. All right. Another one, nickel on steel, looks like. We talked about this one. Very ornate. Governor General's Horse Guards, 1936. Brant Dragoons, 1937 or circa 1937. Royal Canadian Dragoons, 1985. Something like that. And here's another Lord Strathcona's horse, right? 1907.
This one's different because from the other one in that it has a Queen's crown, so we can date it as post 1953. And we actually know the manufacturer of this one, so we know exactly the date, whereas the earlier one was a King's crown, which dates it to the era of King George V and VI.
The one way back in the corner is the same unit, post 1952.
Most unusual in that this one is a household cavalry style of helmet. It's a much larger helmet. It has more decoration on the front, and you'll note that the style of plume is very different. It has a quatrefoil, but above a cylinder, or above a ball, and the rosette is considerably larger than the usual 3/4 inch rosette on the plume, and the plume, rather than being knotted, is bobbed and just hangs straight down.
Bobbed, okay. Well, sir, that's fantastic. Thank you very much again. Let's pan over the whole display once more. Very unusual to get this many fine helmets together.